Depression does not appear out of nowhere. It is not a sign of weakness, laziness, or a lack of faith. Depression is often the result of many forces quietly working together, some seen, some unseen. For some people, depression begins after a painful loss. For others, it grows from years of stress, trauma, rejection, or emotional neglect. And for many, it starts without a clear reason at all, leaving them confused, ashamed, and asking, "Why am I feeling this way?" The truth is this: depression has both causes and triggers. Causes are the deeper roots, things like brain chemistry, genetics, childhood experiences, and long-term stress that slowly shape a person's emotional world over time. Triggers are the sparks, events or situations that activate those roots, such as heartbreak, financial pressure, illness, failure, or major life changes. Understanding the causes and triggers of depression is powerful. It helps us move away from blame and toward compassion. It helps people realize they are not broken. They are responding to real pain. And most importantly, it helps us see that if depression has a cause, it also has a path toward healing. In this lesson, we will break down what causes depression, what triggers it, how they interact, and why recognizing them is the first step toward recovery and hope. 1. Biological causes of depression, brain chemistry, and genetics. Depression is not just a result of negative thinking or life problems. For many people, it begins inside the body, especially the brain. Biological factors can quietly shape how a person feels, thinks, and reacts to the world. Let's break this down clearly. 1. Brain chemistry. When the brain's messages go wrong, the brain works through chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. These chemicals help brain cells communicate and control mood, sleep, appetite, focus, and emotions. In depression, this chemical system becomes imbalanced. Key brain chemicals involved serotonin, the mood stabilizer, helps regulate happiness, calmness, and emotional balance. Low levels are linked to sadness, irritability, hopelessness, sleep problems. When serotonin is low, even small problems can feel overwhelming. Dopamine, the motivation and pleasure chemical controls. Pleasure, reward, and motivation. Low dopamine can cause loss of interest in things once enjoyed, lack of motivation, emotional numbness. This is why depression often feels like nothing brings me joy anymore. Norepinephrine, the energy and alertness chemical, affects energy levels, focus, and response to stress. Low levels can cause fatigue, poor concentration, feeling mentally slow. This explains why many depressed people feel exhausted even after resting. Important truth: these chemical imbalances are not a personal failure. They are biological changes, just like low insulin in diabetes. That's why medications like antidepressants work by restoring chemical balance, not by changing personality. 2. Brain structure and function. Physical changes in the depressed brain. Research shows depression can actually change how parts of the brain work. Prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and emotional control. In depression, activity may be reduced. Negative thoughts become harder to stop. Amygdala controls fear and emotional reactions. In depression, becomes overactive, leads to increased sadness, fear, and emotional sensitivity hippocampus. Responsible for memory and learning. Chronic depression and stress can shrink the hippocampus, cause memory problems, increase rumination, replaying painful thoughts. This shows depression is not imaginary. It has real physical effects on the brain. 3. Genetics. When depression runs in families. Depression can be inherited. If a close family member, such as a parent or sibling, has depression, the risk increases. What genetics mean and what they don't. You can inherit vulnerability. You do not inherit destiny. Genes don't cause depression on their own. They increase sensitivity to stress, trauma, and chemical imbalance. How genetics influence depression. Genes can affect how the brain produces neurotransmitters, how stress hormones, like cortisol, are regulated, how emotionally sensitive a person is. This is why two people experience the same stress. One develops depression, the other does not. Their biology responds differently. 4. Stress hormones and the body's alarm system. Chronic stress triggers high levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. Long-term cortisol overload can damage brain cells, disrupt sleep, weaken emotional regulation, increase risk of depression. People with genetic vulnerability are more sensitive to this stress response. Here are the key takeaways. Depression is not weakness. It is not laziness. It is not a lack of faith or willpower. Depression is a real medical condition shaped by brain chemistry, genetics, and biology. Understanding this removes shame and opens the door to treatment, healing, and hope. 2. Psychological causes of depression, trauma and thinking patterns. Simple explanation. Depression does not always start in the brain alone. Sometimes it begins in the mind and experiences. What a person goes through, what they think about themselves, and how they see the world can slowly lead to depression. Let's break it down simply. 1. Trauma, pain that stays inside. Trauma means something very painful, shocking, or scary that happens to a person. This can be abuse, physical, emotional, or sexual, losing a loved one, growing up in a home full of fighting or neglect, being bullied for a long time, serious accidents or violence, childhood abandonment or rejection. Sometimes the pain ends, but the memory does not. How trauma causes depression. When trauma is not healed, the mind stays in survival mode. The person feels unsafe even when nothing is wrong. Fear, sadness, and shame stay inside. Many people don't cry or talk about it. They hide it. Over time, this hidden pain turns into deep sadness, emotional numbness, feeling empty inside, feeling broken or not normal. This is how trauma slowly becomes depression. 2. Childhood experiences, where it often begins. What happens in childhood shapes the mind. If a child grows up without love or affection, with constant criticism, being compared or called useless, feeling unwanted or ignored, that child may grow up believing, I am not enough, I don't matter, something is wrong with me. These beliefs don't disappear with age, they follow the person into adulthood. 3. Negative thinking patterns, the depressed mind. Depression is strongly linked to how a person thinks. Over time, the mind learns unhealthy habits. Some common depressive thoughts are, nothing will ever get better. I always fail. Everyone else is doing better than me. I am a burden. It's my fault. These thoughts feel true, even when they are not. The problem with these thoughts. Negative thoughts repeat again and again, become automatic, feel impossible to stop. The mind becomes like a broken radio playing the same painful message every day. The more the person believes these thoughts, the deeper the depression becomes. 4. Perfectionism and self-blame. Some people set very high standards for themselves. They believe, I must not fail. I must be strong all the time. I must please everyone. When they make a mistake, they don't forgive themselves. Instead, they blame themselves, feel ashamed, feel like a failure. Living this way is exhausting, and it can lead to depression. 5. Feeling helpless or hopeless. When bad things happen again and again, the mind can learn something dangerous. No matter what I do, nothing will change. This is called learned helplessness, when a person feels trapped, powerless, hopeless about the future, depression can take over. They stop trying, not because they are lazy, but because they feel defeated inside. 6. Bottling up emotions. Many people are taught, don't cry, be strong, keep it inside, so they hide. Anger, sadness, fear, pain, but emotions don't disappear when ignored. They build up, and one day, the mind becomes too heavy to carry them. That emotional overload can turn into depression. One important truth about depression is that depression is not a weak mind, it is a wounded mind. People with depression are not broken. They are often people who felt too much, cared too deeply, hurt for too long, had to survive silently. Depression can come from painful experiences, unhealed trauma, negative thinking, harsh self-judgment, long-term emotional stress. And the good news? Minds can heal. Thoughts can change. Pain can be processed. Hope can return. Most times by the word of God, the very words of our Lord Jesus, who is the supreme healer of depression, a giver of hope and peace unspeakable. For he is always there and ready to listen from those who genuinely called up his name out of a pure and sincere heart. If you are being blessed by our lessons, kindly subscribe to our channel and press the like button below in order to get notified of any recent videos. Another point is the environmental and social triggers of depression: stress, isolation, and work culture. Depression does not always start in the brain alone. Sometimes, it starts in the world around us. The environment we live in, the pressure we carry, the way people treat us, the silence we endure, and over time, that weight becomes too heavy. Today, let's talk about the environmental and social triggers of depression, the things that slowly break people down, without anyone noticing. 1. Chronic stress. Stress is a normal part of life, but stress becomes dangerous when it never ends, when every day feels like a fight. Bills to pay, responsibilities to carry, expectations to meet, problems that never give you a break. The mind stays in survival mode, the body never relaxes, sleep disappears, peace feels impossible. At first, stress makes you tired. Then, it makes you empty. You stop enjoying things. You feel overwhelmed. You feel trapped. And slowly, stress turns into depression. 2. Social isolation and loneliness. Loneliness is not about being alone. You can be surrounded by people and still feel invisible. Isolation happens when no one listens, no one understands, no one checks on you, no one feels safe to talk to. Human beings need connection. We are not designed to carry life alone. When connection is missing, the mind begins to whisper, maybe I don't matter. Maybe nobody cares. Maybe I'm better off silent. Those whispers grow louder, and loneliness becomes depression. 3. Toxic work culture. Many people are depressed because of where they work. Long hours, low pay, no appreciation, constant pressure, fear of losing the job. Rest is called laziness. Burnout is called weakness. Mental health is ignored. People smile at work, but break down at night. Work takes their energy, their joy, their identity. When life becomes only about surviving work, depression quietly takes over. 4. Financial stress and unemployment. Money problems don't just affect the wallet, they affect the mind. Constant financial pressure creates fear, shame, hopelessness. Unemployment makes people feel useless, like a burden, like they have failed. When survival becomes the only goal, hope begins to disappear, and depression follows. 5. Social pressure and expectations. Society teaches us harmful lessons. Be strong. Don't complain. Others have it worse. Just try harder. So people hide their pain. They silence their emotions. They pretend they're okay. but feelings don't disappear when you ignore them. They sink deeper. And what is buried, eventually, becomes depression. 6. Unsafe and traumatic environments. Some people live in constant fear. Violence, abuse, discrimination, conflict, neglect. When danger feels normal, the nervous system never rests, the body survives, but the mind slowly breaks. Let me tell you about Mark. Mark works long hours. He is underpaid. At work, he's constantly criticized. At home, he feels like a failure. Friends stopped calling. Bills keep coming. Hope keeps fading. He doesn't cry. He doesn't talk. He just keeps going. Until one day, nothing feels good anymore. Sleep becomes hard. Life feels empty. Mark is not weak. Mark is exhausted. This is how depression begins. Depression is not always a personal failure. Sometimes, it is a natural response to an unhealthy environment. When people are overworked, undervalued, isolated, unsupported, overstressed, their minds eventually say, "I can't do this anymore." If someone around you is struggling, be kind. If you are struggling, you are not broken. You are human. And no one is meant to carry life alone. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who might need it. You never know who is silently hurting. Another point is childhood experiences, a hidden cause of adult depression. Depression does not always begin in adulthood. Sometimes, it begins in childhood, long before a person has the words to explain pain, long before they understand emotions, long before they know how to ask for help. Childhood experiences shape how we see ourselves, how we trust others, and how we cope with life. When those experiences are painful, the effects can last a lifetime. Why childhood matters. A child's brain is still developing. Their emotions are still forming. Their sense of safety comes from adults. When a child grows up feeling unsafe, unloved, ignored, constantly criticized, their brain learns something dangerous. The world is not safe. I am not enough. These beliefs do not disappear with age. They grow quietly and later appear as depression. 1. Emotional neglect. Emotional neglect is not always loud. It happens when feelings are ignored, tears are dismissed, affection is missing. A child is told to be strong instead of being comforted. The child learns, my emotions don't matter. I should not express how I feel. As adults, these children often struggle to understand their emotions, feel empty or numb, believe asking for help is weakness. This emotional emptiness is a common doorway to depression. 2. Abuse. Physical, emotional, or sexual. Abuse leaves deep scars. Physical abuse teaches fear. Emotional abuse destroys self-worth. Sexual abuse shatters trust and safety. Children may grow up believing, it was my fault. I deserve pain. I am broken. These beliefs follow them into adulthood, fueling shame, self-hatred, anxiety, and depression. 3. Growing up in an unstable home. Children need consistency. They need predictability. They need safety. Homes filled with constant fighting, substance abuse, divorce without emotional support, mental illness without care create emotional chaos. The child becomes alert all the time, always watching, always worried. This constant emotional tension can later turn into chronic depression. 4. Loss and abandonment. Losing a parent. Being abandoned. Being sent away. Being raised without affection. These experiences create deep wounds. The child often thinks, if they left, I must not be lovable. As adults, this can become fear of closeness, fear of rejection, deep sadness, emotional dependence, and eventually, depression. 5. Excessive pressure and high expectations. Some children are loved only when they perform well. Good grades, good behavior, no mistakes, Mistakes are punished. Failure is shamed. The child learns, my worth depends on success. As adults, this leads to perfectionism, burnout, fear of failure, constant self-criticism. When they cannot meet impossible standards, depression takes root. How childhood trauma becomes adult. Depression, childhood pain effects, brain development, stress response, emotional regulation, self-image. The brain learns survival patterns that once protected the child, but harm the adult. What helped them survive childhood becomes the cause of their suffering later. Important truth. If childhood experiences contributed to your depression, it is not your fault. You adapted. You survived. You did the best you could with what you were given. Depression is not weakness. It is a wound that was never allowed to heal. Hope and healing. Healing is possible. With therapy, safe relationships, self-compassion, faith and spiritual support, patience with yourself. You can learn new ways to feel safe, to feel worthy, to feel whole. If this message touched you, you are not alone. Your pain makes sense. Your story matters. Your healing is possible. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes understanding the past is the first step toward freedom. Also, do not forget to subscribe to our page and press the like button below in order not to miss our subsequent episodes. See you on our next cast.